Welcome to Fourth and Frames. I'm Chris, and with me, as always, are my co-hosts Drew Scott and Rhett Manuel. And tonight, we're talking NFL changes and the impacts they will have on the fantasy football 2024 season. Joined by none other than Alfredo Brown. Let's get it popping.
Oh, what's up, guys? How we feeling tonight?
Feeling great, feeling grand. Rhett missed his cue, but that's all.
Should be played at high volume, preferably in a residential area.
Great start, guys. We're there.
Yeah, what happened, man? You had one job.
We're great there.
It's par for the course on this show. And like I mentioned at the top, we have content lead and host of the Footballguys fantasy football show. You can find them sometimes in the fantasy football subreddit on Footballguys Fridays, where they're giving away subscriptions. FIU alum, the man who discovered Jonnu Smith, our pasta sauce brother, Alfredo Brown. Alfredo, welcome to the show, man.
Oh, that was a great intro. Great intro. Man, yeah, that was a heck of a day. Going on JJ Zachary's show and like slowly discovering, oh my God, I caused all the Kyle Pitts issues with Jonnu Smith. That was a weird moment of revelation. Like the meme where you point in the mirror, it's like, it's your fault. You did this to yourself. Yeah, that was me.
Well, it might be time for Kyle Pitts owners to rejoice and finally get you in their good books. Possibly, hopefully. Possibly not. But I'm a big college fantasy football guy, so every opportunity that I got to talk college fantasy football, I'm going to take it. And seeing that when I was looking into your background and where you went to school, I'm not too sure if you follow the program that close at FIU, but I got to ask, how are you feeling with the Chris Mitchell transfer to Notre Dame?
You know, that one kind of stung because, I mean, listen, I've followed FIU kind of loosely recently. It was obviously a lot stronger when I was a student there, right? I was going to all the games and stuff like that. Yeah. Like my first time even paying attention to a game was hearing a radio call from my freshman dorm and hearing T.Y. Hilton return a kickoff for a touchdown. And I was just like, oh, okay, this is like, that's going to be my guy. Turns out he was awesome. But yeah, man, like that, it kind of stinks because FIU ends up being sort of like the feeder program for any other school. Like the second we get someone that's good, especially with now how college football has changed. Players are transferring out quick. And you know what, though? Like, I'm not going to be one of those that gets, up on their soapbox and old man yells at cloud that I'm mad that player. Like, cool, go and do what works best for you. As a fan, it kind of sucks, but that's the college football landscape now to see, good players go and get better opportunities when they can.
Yeah. So, Alfred, I have to ask you a question really quickly. You sound like FIU T.Y. Hilton. It sounds like we were in school at the same time. When did you graduate from FIU? Because we might have been conference rivals.
Oh, man. Okay, so I'm going to date myself here, but I was at FIU from 2008 to 2012.
Oh, yeah, dude, we were conference rivals. I was at Louisiana Lafayette when Desimo and Finroy were there.
Oh, man. Okay, yeah. Didn't like you guys. Didn't like you guys.
But you know what?
You guys, who's the other ones? Western Kentucky. They're always Middle Tennessee State. It always seems like I would look at that schedule and be like, oh, that's an easy team. We can totally beat them. And then I wouldn't know anything about the school. They'd show up and mollywop us like 40-6. And I'm like, all right, so we're still not good. Cool.
Vintage Sun Belt right there.
But you guys got Rocky Beers, so I don't feel that bad for you. You got a guy like
his
Rocky
brother,
Beers.
Rowdy Beers.
Rowdy Beers. You're golden at the end of the day. And before we get into talking coaching changes, we had Hutch on last week. We got Jager lined up coming up in a couple weeks. We are a big Bob Harris podcast, and Rhett is a well-known Dave Kluge fan. So
I'm
at
sorry.
the end of this episode and the end of every other interview we have with the Football Guys staff, we are handing out Rad scores as podcast guests at the end of it. So no pressure, all right? All right, no pressure.
Leans forward in chair. I'm getting ready. Let's go.
Yeah, let's go. So we are talking NFL coaching changes and the impacts that they are going to have across the NFL for the 2024 fantasy football season. And we are doing that today with Football Guys, Alfredo Brown at the Pretend GM. And the first team we are going to talk about here is the Atlanta Falcons, getting rid of Arthur Smith, making fantasy managers ecstatic, bringing in Raheem Morris and Zach Robinson from the Los Angeles Rams, a team that Drew here knows very, very well. I'm hoping that Robinson brings in some of those concepts from the Los Angeles Rams, the subtle parts of the offense to help create space for the quarterback to make simple throws and for the wide receivers to attack the empty spots in the zone. We've seen it in that offense last year with the two wide receivers in Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua being top 10 in zone reception percentage. And then you look at the quarterback that they brought in Kirk Cousins, number one in completion percentage when throwing against zone coverage in 2022 and in 2023. And then if you look in 2021, he was seventh in that category, completing over 73% of his throws. So passing offense is great and all, and it's something that we are looking forward to as fantasy managers moving ahead into the 2024 season. But Alfredo, where can we, I know where my pessimism is going to lay with this team researching the trends, but I really want to hear where your pessimism comes from this Atlanta Falcons team and the new regime that they got there.
Yeah. So I've learned that trying to dig too deep into deciding what coaches are going to do can get dangerous, right? Because we start to make too many assumptions about what these guys are going to do. And I think at least a lot of good coaches want to try to alter their game plan based on who they have on their roster. And so I think what we've seen in the past is like, well, one, we know that Kirk Cousins is going to have plenty of comfortability with this offense, right? He's had Kevin O'Connell last year in Minnesota. Before that, it was a very similar playbook when he was in Washington with the team name it used to have. But I mean, he's going to be familiar with this. And so now you try to look at what the trends are going to be. Yeah, there's some light at the end of the tunnel for Kyle Pitts here. Kirk Cousins has not traditionally been a tight end guy, but when he got a good one, like TJ Hawkinson, all of a sudden those targets start to go up. The two guys I'm most excited for, and it's interesting because like you try to read between the lines too of what these coaches say is, you know, you listen to them in the interviews, and Zach Robinson, when he was asked about the offense, first like two names he said were Drake London, Bijan Robinson.
Mm-hmm.
And it was almost kind of funny to be like, hey, you're not going to mention Kyle Pitts there, man? Like, what you doing? So yeah, like those are the guys that I'd be excited about. And when it comes to like the trends that I'd be worried about, man, it's kind of hard. I'm looking at this team through rose-colored glasses right now. If there's something that I'm going to be most worried about, it's probably not going to be a trend. It's going to be the Achilles injury to Kirk Cousins at his age and trying to see a guy recover from that. That's the thing that's probably got me the most worried. But I'm intrigued to hear what is the trend that has you worried about this Atlanta Falcons offense?
For me, it's the running back position in Bijan Robinson and how I feel he's going to be overdrafted as we get in closer to the NFL season. And what that comes from is mainly who is under center, and that's the quarterback in Kirk Cousins. And when I broke down the running backs that played behind Kirk Cousins from his time in Washington in 2015, when he really started to have that, you know, starting quarterback role, that QB1 role, up into 2022 when he had Dalvin Cook in his backfield. Through those 8 seasons, he's only had the running back finish in the top 12 of scoring 3 times. And he doesn't overly target the running back. When if you look at his passing breakdown and depth of target, passing behind the line of scrimmage is something that he doesn't overly do. Only one time one of his running backs have hit over 60 targets. And when you're looking at the top 10 finishing running backs at the end of the season, they have over that 60 target threshold. And it was that 2019 season where Dalvin Cook had the 73 targets and over 500 yards. And when you break down the running backs totals in that 8-year span, they're only averaging 54 targets, 360 yards, and 1.6 touchdowns. So it's not a recipe for success when you look at how the backfield's built with Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier. So that's where my pessimism comes from when looking at the offense as a whole and really just breaking down the pieces that they got and how history and how they've worked in the past in the NFL. So for me, that's where it is.
Yeah, I think you got a good point there with Kirk Cousins and his previous target rates to running backs. I wonder how much something like that changes. Not that he was ever a runner, but I wonder how much something like that changes with the Achilles injury and simply just with who Bijan Robinson is on that team. Like there's going to be a definite hierarchy of like which players. And I almost wonder if there's going to be such a focus on it that Arthur Smith didn't use our best players. Yeah. And now we have to reverse course so much. And so like, that's also a slippery slope, right? Like there's no definitive data that's going to tell you that will happen. So that's why I say like trends are scary to me, but you're absolutely right. The targets to the running back, it can be a little shaky there. And I think for us to assume it's going to go one way or the other. I mean, yeah, the Rams and Sean McVay and Zach Robinson, they've targeted the running back heavily. They've used single running back heavily, even going back to Zach Robinson's first year with Todd Gurley, which it's in the range of possibilities for Bijan Robinson.
Yeah.
However, Tyler Allgeier's not going away, right? So like he's still going to be there. It's going to be very curious. As of right now, I'm super excited about Bijan Robinson, but I think over the course of this summer, there's going to be a lot to dig into.
Agreed. And Drew, I'm interested to hear your take on the two coaches coming over, the offensive coordinator and the head coach coming from the Rams with your connection to Los Angeles there. Like what's your take on what they're going to bring to this Falcons offense?
Yeah, but usually, whenever you hear you're getting a Rams head coach, there's a lot of excitement because, it's coming from the Sean McVay tree. But then you find out that you're getting the defensive guy. But the good news is at least he's bringing a highly sought after offensive guy along with him from the same staff. So you still get that Sean McVay bump. And so, like Alfredo was saying, I was looking forward to hearing some pessimism because it's really hard for me not to be excited because the entire season last year, like most of us, and this offseason, all I was begging for was competent coaching and a quarterback. And in my eyes, they got both, and, to Alfredo's point, we have to worry about how Kirk Cousins recovers, but thankfully he doesn't rely on his explosiveness a ton. So hopefully he can recover a little bit better than some would from the Achilles injury. So, I like the upgrades they made at quarterback and the coaching staff. And I was already, as you guys already know, I was already extremely high on Drake London, Kyle Pitts, and Bijan Robinson. So I'm trying to find something to talk myself down because I think that they've had an incredible offseason. It just made me that much more excited for these guys.
Yeah, I agree, man. I'm just so afraid of seeing good teams on paper and hoping that it translates to the season. We've been hurt by the New York Jets last year. We were all hyped up with the New York Jets and everything that they got going on with their old quarterback. And now we're getting Kirk Cousins, a guy that we've seen throw the ball over 600 times. Like he's got the ability to take this passing offense to the promised land for the Atlanta Falcons and contend in the NFC South. But like you said, it's rose-colored glasses right now. We're all hoping for the best. My nickname for the Atlanta Falcons right now, as a Saints fan, is really hard, and that's the Federal Reserve because they have the opportunity to just print money, print fantasy points, and I like it. So let's move on to the next team that has had a facelift in the coaching room, and that is the Los Angeles Chargers. Reunited, and it feels so good. Jim Harbaugh is back with Greg Roman. Combination, a duo that has been together since 2009, since their Stanford days. National champion Jim Harbaugh, offensive coordinator Greg Roman. The offense has been completely stripped down. Mike Williams is gone. Keenan Allen is gone. Austin Eckler's gone. Gerald Everett's gone. That is around over 300 of their targets last year. 3 of those guys were the top 3 in targets for the Los Angeles Chargers. Alfredo, knowing the history of Jim Harbaugh, knowing the history of success or lack thereof of wide receivers under Greg Roman, if the Chargers do take a wide receiver at 5 in Marvin Harrison or Malik Neighbors, how much of a hit do these guys take in your rankings, if anything at all?
So, and you're going to notice this as I say this, there's a lot of gray area to these answers, and that's simply just because fantasy football kind of has to be analyzed and played with a gray area. Does it give any of those receivers a hit going to a run-heavy offense? Sure. But does that also kind of get seesawed and balanced out by being potentially the top target, or not potentially, the top target on that team? Yeah, absolutely. Right. I was talking with Andrew Cooper earlier today, who's like the tight end whisperer. And he said, man, if the Chargers make that trade with Minnesota and they move back to like 11, right, and they can take Brock Bowers there, all of a sudden Brock Bowers becomes this phenomenal tight end for both redraft and dynasty. And we're going after him, right? And so if we can have that kind of mindset about Brock Bowers as a tight end, I think you can still have that mindset about a Malik Neighbors. It's still Justin Herbert and Malik Neighbors. Like that would that's fantastic to have a top tier wide receiver tied to a top tier quarterback. Now, what worries me is obviously it's not just Jim Harbaugh, guys. Like to me, I honestly, Jim Harbaugh is just kind of the figurehead at this point. Like they just wanted a leader with a big name that's going to get them to sell tickets. Right now, who's going to be kind of handling everything for the offense is going to be Greg Roman, and Jim Harbaugh just wanted a guy that he could trust. We already know what Greg Roman does. I mean, throughout his tenure in the NFL, his offenses were typically towards the bottom of the league in passing rate. I wonder how much of that is going to change with Justin Herbert. We have to ask ourselves that question. We kind of have to hear what they're saying in interviews throughout the offseason. As of right now, everything points towards I have no clue. Like they've gotten rid of all their best receivers. They really don't have a strong running game set up. Looking at the depth chart that you guys have on here, the fact that we have Isaiah Spiller and Darius Davis and Will Disley listed as starters, it's just freaking me out. And I've already been seeing how Justin Herbert is just dropping down draft boards. Doing a underdog best ball draft today, and he was at quarterback 13. And like last year, that would have just been absolutely insane. So there's a good chance this Chargers team is just awful. Like they could be worst in the league or bottom 2 in the league and picking up near the top of the draft. And who knows, maybe you start all those rumors about Justin Herbert getting traded. And as of right now, though, I think that's a little crazy. I've heard those rumors, Justin Herbert getting traded. So I don't think that's happening right now.
McCarthy's the hot name in the streets right now.
Yeah.
And the Herbert fade, I feel, is unwarranted too, because if you look at the history of these two coaches, and if you look at the history of Greg Roman in general, his offense is going to be structured around a quarterback that can move with his feet, and Justin Herbert is not afraid to do that. We've seen it with Andrew Luck, Colin Kaepernick, just previously with Lamar Jackson. So Herbert's not a guy that I'm going to want to fade. The wide receivers are probably where I'm going to fade in this offense because just based on the history, Felix Sharp dropped a tweet the other day there where he said Jim Harbaugh hasn't produced more than 2,000-yard wide receivers in his 17 years of coaching. Now, he's produced 3 of them, 3 at the NFL, but 2 of those seasons were the same guy. So only 2 wide receivers have hit that mark. So that's a little alarming. I'm not going to fade the running backs, whether it is Gus Edwards, the RB1 there, or a possible, rookie that they bring in. But Rhett, if they do end up bringing in Brock Bowers into this offense, where does he fit in for you? Not rookie rankings, but where does he fit in with you rankings overall in this Greg Roman offense?
I mean, if you're looking at a guy like Brock Bowers, who first off, if he gets drafted as 11th overall, whatever it is, he immediately, instantly, off top, becomes the best receiving option in that place. Off top. So for me, that puts an immediate spike in his value where he was probably top 10. He's probably knocking more along the lines of being a top 5 tight end in fantasy at minimum. I mean, we saw it last year where Sam Laporta came in in an offense that was prolific with Amon-Ra St. Brown and ended up the tight end one in fantasy last season. And that was with a quarterback who was less talented in Jared Goff than Justin Herbert is. So I know the Greg Roman stuff is scary, but like Alfredo was saying earlier, when you have the option between a guy who's coming into what is going to be a bad offense and becoming that top option in a bad offense, that immediately makes him more appealing and a guy that you're going to want to target, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. That's fair. Now, Alfredo, if they don't attack a wide receiver early enough in the draft that will be that alpha wide receiver for them, who's the one wide receiver that we should get? We know the issues with Quentin Johnston. Josh Palmer's been there for a little bit. Darius Davis seems like an afterthought in most cases, but who's the receiving option we should take here?
Yeah, I think just kind of the de facto guy you'd have to say there is Josh Palmer. I wouldn't fault anyone for going after Quentin Johnston. He's not a guy that I rated very highly. And of course, like everyone says that now because, you know, he struggled his rookie season, but there's been a few guys like that where I kind of see their film. They're bigger. They're not as nuanced in terms of route running. They struggle with drops here and there. Like I had similar feelings with Treylon Burks, and we're kind of seeing how these things are coming to fruition with these guys. But if we had to go with like who I'd be most comfortable with, and especially at the value, is Josh Palmer. We've kind of seen that. I've been calling him the wide receiver handcuff for the last few years because every time one of these guys went down, particularly Mike Williams, Josh Palmer was always in there, and he was always a top 36 wide receiver. And now, even on a very, low pass volume offense, whatever it may be, he's still potentially the wide receiver one here for Justin Herbert and the top target overall. So yeah, it's a guy that we've seen do it before. The ceiling may not be super high, but that kind of gets squashed when you look at what the ADP value might be.
Yeah. How excited will you be if the Chargers do end up taking Blake Corum with the ties with Jim Harbaugh? Okay, I like that. Yeah, I like that.
You know what? I think everyone's doing much to do about every time we see this happen, right? A college coach goes to the NFL. He's going to draft all of his players from his college team. And like, they rarely do that. Even when Pete Carroll went to the NFL and it was, he has a chance to go and get his USC guys. And he didn't. And then a lot of these college coaches don't. We don't see that happen all that often. And listen, if Blake Corum goes to Chargers, cool. Like I have some good expectations for him then, but he's also still going to be splitting with Gus Edwards, and you're still going to get rushing touchdowns taken away by Justin Herbert. It's going to happen. I'm not one of these people that's super high on Blake Corum. I think I've got him as like my running back 5 in this class, and Jagger, who you guys are going to have next week or whenever it is, I think he has him as like running back 2 or maybe running back 1, and I think he's absolutely crazy for that. Or no, I think he's got him at 2. But like I didn't say all that. He's got him at 2. I think he's got him. I don't want to put my boy out there, but yeah. You know who it actually is? I was looking at this the other day. If I'm not mistaken, the Chargers hired the running back coach who used to be at USC. So I would not be surprised, and I tweeted this the other day, I would not be surprised if they're drafting Marshawn Lloyd probably in the 2nd or 3rd round. And I mean, we already know Jim Harbaugh's got plenty of those Cali ties. So yeah, I would not be surprised if Marshawn Lloyd is actually their guy. And, being a little selfish here, I have him rated higher. So if he went to the Chargers, he gets that opportunity. Yeah, I'd be pretty stoked about that.
Yeah, I'd be much more excited for that than Blake Corum for sure.
And Drew, speaking of the running backs, whatever rookie running back goes to this team has instantly got to be pole vaulted up your rankings, right?
I mean, I value draft capital quite a bit. So if it's a running back that gets drafted on day 3 to the Chargers, they'll probably move up a couple spots, but it won't be anything drastic. Now, if a running back gets drafted in the 2nd round or the top 100 picks to the Chargers and they really invest some draft capital, then we're talking a little bit. And that's where I'm hoping they don't take Blake Corum, because he's the one guy that I think I've got him around like 7. And I know I'm going to have to move him up if he gets day 2 draft capital to a team that has the availability for somebody to take carries. But it would be a lot easier for me to stomach if it's somebody I believe in that gets taken, that early. So it really just, a lot of it depends on where the running back comes from, because I'm also a big Gus Edwards fan too. I mean, other than last year, the guy was a walking 5 yards a carry pretty much his entire career. So he's going to give you what he's going to give you. I mean, he's not going to be a 3-down back, anything like that. But he's a great real NFL running back. And so it's the carries aren't just going to be completely for the taking either. But so a lot of it really is going to come down to draft capital for me, and just to see where the fit lands from there.
Yep, I like it. I like it a lot there. It's not going to be the sexiest offense going into 2024, but it's got a few pieces as fantasy managers you're going to want to invest in. And the next team we're going to talk about here has a era change. The gum chewing era is over, and the Seattle Seahawks have moved on from Pete Carroll, where it seemed like he didn't want to give up the job. He handcuffed himself to the radiator. They had to drag him out of the office, but they brought in a defensive-minded head coach in Mike McDonald from the Harbaugh coaching tree, and they brought in offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb, who is moving on from the college ranks, where the past 2 seasons he spent time with the Washington Huskies, a team that just went to the national championship, a former wide receiver and a former running back himself. Just last year, he was a semifinalist for one of the top assistants in the nation award. He helped Michael Penix Jr. get the Maxwell Award for top player in the nation. In his first year in Washington, he led the Washington Huskies led the nation in passing offense and third down conversions, which is huge because that's an area where the Seahawks struggled a lot last year, were those third down conversions. So bringing an offensive-minded offensive coordinator and attaching him to that defensive-minded head coach, can we see relevance come back to this Seattle Seahawks offense in 2024, Alfredo? Because we were all high on Geno Smith last year. We were all high on the pass catchers, and we were all high on the running backs. And at each level, they have seemed to disappoint last season. But can they turn it around going into 2024 with this new coaching regime?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually pretty excited about the Seahawks going into this year. I think that Ryan Grubb ends up being a perfect fit for what they want to do. And Michael Penix Jr. was the first rookie prospect that I watched on this, for this class. And I had 2 player comps for him. One was Jalen Hurts in a Chuck E. Cheese ball pit because he can't really move around, but he throws pretty similarly. And then it was Geno Smith, but with horse blinders on the inside of his eyes because dude was only throwing to the outside of the field. But the thing is that it's the perfect spot for Ryan Grubb because now he gets to go work with a quarterback that has a similar but more refined skill set to Michael Penix Jr. He's not having to change a whole lot of what he's doing. And we already know this is an aggressive coordinator. He wants to take shots downfield. He's going to get players in motion. DK Metcalf going into the Rome Odunze role. It sounds just fantastic. Thanks. Okay. Getting DK Metcalf just to simply run a deep route is that just seems like a pretty good idea. Yeah. He big, he fast, he strong. Dude, yeah, let's utilize this guy in that way where he can beat corners one-on-one, who I'm really excited about. And I know that Tyler Lockett kind of gets tossed to the side often, but I am actually excited here for Jackson Smith-Njigba. I think that he's going to be the guy that's going to be moved around a lot in that offense. And he might not be doing a lot of the deep stuff that we've seen, but he is going to be one of those guys attacking the middle of the field, getting underneath, being able to come in motion on some of these plays. And so I am excited to see where he goes because I still rank Jackson Smith-Njigba pretty highly. I think the thing is that we're getting spoiled now where we have a new class of really good rookies where I think JSN would probably be the 4th wide receiver in this class, but he's still super talented. There's still a ton of opportunity for him. And this offense is going to be extremely aggressive. I cannot stress that enough. They're going to be going for it a ton on 4th down. It is going to absolutely match what Geno Smith is good at, what he was good at in college and what he's been good at with the Seahawks. So yeah, I think it's a perfect fit.
Yeah, I love it as well. Seeing what the slot wide receiver, you mentioned Jackson Smith-Njigba there, and seeing what the slot wide receiver has done in that Washington offense over the past 2 seasons when Grubb was there. I mean, they're putting up over 1,000 yards each, and that was Jalen Polk and Jalen McMillan. So I'm just like you. I'm really excited to see what comes out of this passing offense. But Rhett, we've talked about the 2023 rookie running back darling in Zach Charbonnet, and it was the Kenneth Walker show all last year. Do you see a situation changing under this new offense in Seattle with the running backs, or is it Kenneth Walker's show again for 2024?
I'm going to lean Kenneth Walker because Zach Charbonnet, whenever he played last year, he just was not as well as he tested. We didn't see that same sort of burst and all those different things on the field. And we've seen it with Kenneth Walker. We've seen the breakaway run rate be outlandish in the league. And we've seen in that Washington offense where that running back last year did not test at an exceptional level in the combine and was still super duper effective. So put a Kenneth Walker who has pretty good size and really good speed. Give him Ryan Grubb. Give him DK Metcalf. Give him all these things. I mean, personally, I'm very excited about the upside of Kenneth Walker for this season.
Yeah, I'm as well. And you see it there on that graphic, rushing attempts 31st, rushing yards 28th. That's not something you usually see from that Pete Carroll style of offense. So I'm hoping they kind of get that vision of a running offense back in Seattle. Not too much because we want the wide receivers to be successful. But Drew, if you had to rank the pass catchers in this offense, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and Jackson Smith-Njigba, I won't give you Noah Fant because he's automatically the 4. If you had to put these guys in order based on where they finish next year, which way are you going?
I think I'd go DK, JSN, Tyler Lockett, with DK and JSN being relatively close. But I do expect JSN to take a leap in this upcoming year. And that's no disrespect to Tyler Lockett either. Like, I think he is an incredible receiver, but I do think that, JSN is ascending a little bit with Tyler Lockett descending. But clearly Seattle still values him, or they wouldn't have kept him around the way they did and brought him back. So I still think he has a role. I just think that I still am a big believer in JSN, the talent. So I think he takes a step forward in year 2. And I still think DK will slightly be the guy.
Yeah, I like that. And before we move on to the next team, Alfredo, Geno Smith isn't the quarterback brought in by this coaching staff. They did trade for Sam Howell. How much of a short leash do you think Geno Smith has at the start of the season? And when do you think we see Sam Howell come in, if at all?
Oof. Well, I think that, so one, you're absolutely right. Obviously, like this is not the regime that brought him in, or excuse me, not the coaching staff that brought him in, but the coaching staff that was put together absolutely fits his strengths. So we would probably have to see a full-on meltdown by Geno Smith here to not be the starter anymore. And especially with the age of some of these guys, Tyler Lockett being a little bit older, not that DK Metcalf is old, but like this team from the offense to defense, they're pretty much set to compete right now. And then losing Aaron Donald from that division opens things up a lot more too. So I would think it would take a lot. Sorry. Yeah, Drew, I see that over your shoulder, buddy. Yeah, it would take a lot, I think, for Geno Smith to not be the starter over there, but it's possible. It's possible that we see Sam Howell. I do think that he's just more of the insurance policy. If they say we have a competitive team, we want to remain in the running for things right now, and if Geno goes down, I don't think we want to have to turn back to Drew Lock again. Sam Howell is just a fine backup.
Yep.
He is. But it hurts my soul to see him get traded and not be a starter in the NFL. Seeing, he didn't play that bad last year. He was in the top end of passing yards, but that just maybe goes to speak on how bad Washington was as a whole.
He's a great fit. He's a great fit for that team. Like, there's a reason they went out and got him, and like they traded draft capital to get him. right? I
Yeah.
mean, they could have gone after Justin Fields and it would have been cheaper. But I
Mhm,
mean, like,
mhm.
yeah, Sam
Sure.
Howell was the fit that they wanted. So it's very possible he gets back on the field there, but I think it would have to be injury or just a complete meltdown for Gino.
Yeah. And who's a player on the Seattle Seahawks that you're just not gonna draft out? I mean, I think there's probably one solid answer in there, but I'm interested to hear what you got to say on this one.
Well, I mean, if we're going based off what we have here on the screen, Noah Fant, I'm probably not
Yeah,
drafting him.
yes.
Right.
You know who I'm probably not gonna draft. Ugh, I hate to say it because I never want to have like a do not draft list, right?
Sure.
But
Yeah.
oh man,
The
I
value is
guess
always going to determine whether or not you're drafting one of
yeah.
these guys.
There's
So
not really a guy there that I dislike. If I
yeah,
would say like probably someone I'm avoiding might be Zach Charbonnet. But even then, like if the value's right, then cool. Like you just go grab a guy in an ambiguous backfield, and it just takes one Kenneth Walker injury for you to
Right.
now have a workhorse back. So it's kind of tough. I don't think there's a guy on this team that I'm actively avoiding except for Noah Fant.
unless we get a Noah Fant, what is it, 7-year breakout? Are we going to finally get the 7-year itch, the 7-year breakout from Noah Fant?
The 7
Probably
year
not.
itch. Love it.
All right, we're going to move on to another team that has moved on from a long tenured head coach. And as a guy that's been watching football for quite a long time, it's going to be weird not seeing the Patriots. I mean, it's already weird not seeing the Patriots with Tom Brady, and it's going to be even more weird not seeing them with Bill Belichick. And if you watched any of the Dynasty documentary, it was a total hit piece on Bill Belichick as they kicked him out the door. They just made him look like Dr. Evil in that Patriots front office there. So they've got rid of Bill Belichick. They brought in Gerard Mayo. They brought in Alex Van Pelt over from the Browns as the offensive coordinator. But in all honesty, with what they got there, like you can see, I have the NFL pick 3 overall as their starting quarterback. Their wide receiver room is going to leave a lot to be desired. They re-signed Hunter Henry there. Their running back rooms are okay, but what can we ultimately expect out of the New England Patriots, knowing the history of the offensive coordinator and the uncertainty of the quarterback position?
Yeah, it's not going to be great. It's not going to be great. And I kind of feel for it's always loaded, right? Because we said this last year with the Texans, where we were like, that team's not very good. I feel bad for whatever quarterback goes there. And they were fine. They were better than fine. They were record breaking, right? With CJ Stroud. So I do think we probably end up with Drake May on this team at pick 3, starting for the Patriots. And that's going to put him in a really tough spot. And so like what we've seen in the past, Alex Van Pelt he's worked closely with Aaron Rodgers, and he's done, like he's kind of been all over the NFL for a while. Not really like a ton of experience in actually calling plays, but with Alex Van Pelt, like what we're going to see most likely is going to be like a quick hitting West Coast offense type scheme. We're probably going to be seeing a lot of use with these running backs, and I think they've already signaled that with signing Antonio Gibson. You're going to be doing a lot of outside zone running, so like maybe there's some goodness there for Ramondre Stevenson, but this is a Patriots offense that's probably not going to be scoring a lot, probably not going to be moving the ball up and down the field as best as we want them to. I don't even know if Ramondre is really the best fit for an outside zone scheme. I'm just like, if we talk about with the Seattle Seahawks, who I might be avoiding there, let's just say I'm going to avoid the entire Patriots team. I do not want a single player here. Even they've added KJ Osborne, right? Like in the wide receiver room. It's like, you kind of see what they're doing here is they have a bunch of guys that really work underneath Juju, DeMario Douglas, KJ Osborne. He can sometimes stretch the field as well, but like really they don't have sort of what you might call your traditional alpha wide receiver here. They've got a couple of fast guys that can take the top off every once in a while, but for the most part are probably going to be working underneath a lot. So they're going to get these guys into space, quick hitting passes. It's going to be one of those offenses that kind of lulls you to sleep, and they're going to try to win with ball control offense, slowing down the game for teams like my Dolphins or the Buffalo Bills, and then try to win with defense. I mean, Gerard Mayo. Like that's what he's done defense his whole career, whether he's been playing or coaching. So I think that's probably going to be the identity of this team.
Yep. That's fair. And Drew, Alfredo mentioned possibly Drake May landing there. And if Drake May lands in New England, he's going to take a hit for me ultimately because of just everything they got built and everything Alfredo just mentioned of what they got going on there on that team. But if they land Jaden Daniels and he ends up in the New England Patriots quarterback room as their quarterback one, do you invest heavily in Jaden Daniels in this offense, or is he someone like Drake May? If he ends up in New England, you're gonna push back because no matter what, the offense is not great.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, not great, Bob. In this scenario, I'm assuming that Drake May would be going to Washington. So I would prefer Drake May over Jaden Daniels. But if we're just comparing how I would feel with Jaden Daniels in New England versus Drake May in New England, I think I would feel better about Jaden Daniels' value just because he has the ability to hold up his value on his own a little bit more with how, it's not that Drake May is immobile, but he's not Jaden Daniels mobile. And so Jaden Daniels can at least prop up his own value a little bit more and do more with less with his legs. Whereas, Drake May would be a little bit more reliant on the playmakers that New England just does not have. So I would feel if I had to pick a quarterback that I would feel better about in the situation, it would be Jaden Daniels. But for fantasy purposes, my hope is that New England just trades out of the pick and somebody like Minnesota comes up and drafts a quarterback and an offense we could be excited about. That's my selfish hope. But no, if I had to pick one, I would feel more comfortable with Jaden Daniels in that offense than I would Drake May.
Yeah, I mean, I would be interested to see Jaden Daniels in an offense without Malik Neighbors and without Brian Thomas Jr., two elite field stretchers. It's going to end up on an offense with Demario Douglas, Kendrick Bourne, KJ Osborne, and Juju Smith-Schuster. Rhett, just going around the whole team in general, it's not looking good. But the probably number one pass catching option in this offense might end up being Hunter Henry. If you are a drafter that waits on drafting a tight end, is Hunter Henry someone that you're going to end up targeting in your drafts?
God, that's such a tough question because, I mean, first off, as we've mentioned, we're talking about the New England Patriots offense with a new coach and not a lot of playmakers. And Hunter Henry, if you let me pull this up real quick, is coming off of a 42 catch for a 419-yard season with 6 touchdowns last year. And we never, ever want to be on a touchdown-dependent tight end in any way, shape, or form. So at value, sure. Like, I'll take anybody at value. But, I mean, it's one of those pinch your nose and hope for the best situations. But to fully answer your question, no, I don't think I'm actively targeting Hunter Henry. But if he falls to me in the right spot, sure, why not? Let's take a flyer.
Yep, I like that. And then if they do end up with Drake May or Jaden Daniels, how much of that offense are you going to end up investing in, knowing that the situation at quarterback has gotten significantly better?
Like we said, it has to be more about if it's Jaden, then you probably get a little more upside out of that position this year for sure, like we previously stated.
Maybe you can get a little bit more excited for Pop Douglas because, I mean, the dude can play. So if he has a quarterback that can actually get him the ball, maybe you can at least be a little excited because, I mean, Douglas can play ball. So, like, you can talk me into him late if we get a quarterback upgrade.
Yeah, both of those dudes can throw the ball. So, I mean, yeah, Pop Douglas was solid last year with Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi playing quarterback. So, yeah, if you have a quarterback that is significantly upgraded, which we would expect with either Jaden Daniels or Drake May, I mean, Pop Douglas definitely gets a little bit of a bump. And also, you have to keep in mind, Kendrick Bourne is back on 3 years and $33 million. That is not a small amount of money for a third wide receiver. Mm-hmm. So he's going to have a role no matter what because they're paying him to have a role in that offense.
Yep, that's fair enough. Fredo, before we head over to our last team, if the Patriots do what the Patriots do and end up trading back from that number 3 pick overall and enter the season with a quarterback room of Jacoby Brissett and Bailey Zappi for fantasy purposes, which of the two is the quarterback you hope that they roll with?
It's got to be Jacoby. It's got to be Jacoby Brissett. I mean, we've already seen that he can be fantasy relevant. He can make other players fantasy viable.
Yep.
I don't think you're drafting him in single quarterback leagues, but I think in some of those super flex leagues, you might consider it if you wait really late. And I'm just like, just because he's the option over Bailey Zappi doesn't make him a good option. I'm just saying, like, that is the quarterback that would at least make this team slightly more fantasy relevant.
Yeah, agreed.
It's not great. I hope for New England's sake that they invest in a quarterback. They might be able to get one a little bit later in the draft if they do wait. With how, I guess, deep the class is, with 5 guys projected to be possibly day one 6 guys now. Or 5 guys, right? 6 guys projected to be possible starters in the NFL. So it's if they do things right, they can end up with a nice project quarterback that they can sit behind a guy like Jacoby Brissett or Bailey Zappi, and then maybe do the Jordan Love plan where they can have a guy sit for 3 years. Now, ultimately, they don't have an Aaron Rodgers in front of the guy that is sitting there, but anytime you can give a young quarterback the opportunity to hold a clipboard and figure out what the team is doing as a whole, it's going to benefit that quarterback. If you're throwing some of these young guys in situations where they're week 1 starters, like in the next team we're going to talk about here, and the Washington Commanders, a team that doesn't have a good defensive team, doesn't have a great offensive line, has decent pieces receiving wise. They brought in Zach Ertz, they got Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, they brought in Austin Eckler to help out the quarterback. But as the team as a whole, getting rid of Ron Rivera, getting rid of Eric Bieniemy, bringing in Dan Quinn, bringing in Cliff Kingsbury, and knowing the success that Cliff Kingsbury has had with quarterbacks, Pat Mahomes, Johnny Manziel, Kyler Murray, Case Keenum was a dog when he was under Cliff Kingsbury there. If they do take a quarterback, which most likely they are going to take a quarterback, how excited, Alfredo, are you going to be for this offense with Cliff Kingsbury and the history that he has had in producing elite quarterbacks?
Yeah, I mean, you just, even the names that are not quite as ballyhooed there, like the Case
even
Keenums,
himself,
like mentioned.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I mean, like, so there are definitely a lot of avenues in which a quarterback can be successful in this offense. I would be pretty excited for whoever goes there. I think I would be more excited about Jaden Daniels going there simply because of the rushing ability. But I also, I wrote this yesterday, I think he's the perfect fit for that offense. You kind of look back at the quarterbacks that Cliff Kingsbury had, and it's been guys that can hit the deep ball, but also like plenty of guys that can actually run around and make things happen. And Jaden Daniels obviously fits that mold. He doesn't have necessarily the strongest arm, but he uses the deep ball really well. He can feather passes in there. He can drop them in a bucket. And it's not like this team is filled with burners anyways. Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson are great, but they're not your typical deep threat kind of guy. So yeah, with Cliff being there, it's probably going to be his typical air raid style offense. And that's something that works really well for a guy like Jaden Daniels, where you're going to have either he's going to be able to hit these deep routes on the proper timing and drop it over their shoulder, or that defense is cleared out so much that Jaden's out and he's moving anyways.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely going to be one of those things that he's the guy that I would assume has the higher ceiling over Drake May, because he's the one that still probably needs to develop a little bit more than Drake May. And if there's a guy that can probably do that, it's Cliff Kingsbury. Now, we're making a lot of assumptions here, but
Yeah,
I think whichever quarterback ends up there with Kingsbury is going to be probably one of the best scenarios, aside from the Chicago Bears now adding all these great weapons. But it's a pretty good scenario. Oh, you know what? No, I started to think about like Vikings, all this. It's a good scenario. It's not one of the best, but it's still a pretty good scenario. A huge step up from where the Patriots are at.
Yeah. My biggest worry is how much a team like Washington is going to ask out of their rookie quarterback, with how bad their defense is, how bad their offensive line is. You're going to want someone that can process at an elite level playing under center against a team that, might see the quarterback lead the league in pressures and sacks. So, and escapability is going to be a huge thing with a wholly offensive line, and bringing Jaden Daniels there is going to be, like you said, probably the perfect spot for his ability and for fantasy managers to take him. Yeah, go ahead, Rhett.
Yeah, and that's kind of the concern with Jaden for me. Like, I understand the upside, the mobility, and all these things. You watch his tape, and I watch him extensively at LSU for 2 years. His penchant for holding on to the ball just a tad too long is there. And if he's behind a bad offensive line, which we expect it to be, thing. I mean, it's a cause for concern. And I know he has the escapability, and I know he can dodge some of that pressure, but you're still talking about a guy that's 6'3", about 202 pounds on a good day. He's going to weigh 207, 208. Let's be honest. He's somewhere between 200 and 205. You're putting him against a Daniil Hunter, TJ Watt, whoever it is, coming around that edge, and he is left out to hang and dry. That could be a bad situation for him. So, yes, I agree. Among the teams we're talking about, especially against New England, it is a better scenario. But wouldn't shock me at the same time to see, because we know Drake May does have that mobility. We know he's got the big arm. We know we've got all these things. If they're concerned about the offensive line this year, and they're seeing these guys for the most part being equal, which I think they are. Jaden has a little bit more of a ceiling, but Drake May is a little bit more polished, like Alfredo discussed. It has to play into their decision, in my opinion, right?
Yeah, has to. It has to. And if you're looking at the team as a fantasy production kind of like wagon, to say the least, they've got 2 wide receivers that can finish. Terry McLaurin can finish as a back-end wide receiver 1 with an elite quarterback. Jahan Dotson can finish as a back-end wide receiver 2, maybe mid wide receiver 3 with some good quarterback play. Then you look at the running backs, Brian Robinson, they brought in Austin Eckler, Drew. When you're drafting, you're investing heavily in wide receivers early. You maybe grab an elite tight end. If you're a 0 RB drafter, knowing how Cliff Kingsbury likes to run his offenses, which of the running back between Brian Robinson and the aging Austin Eckler do you put your chips on?
Whenever we get to draft day, it's probably going to end up being Brian Robinson, just because I think he's going to be the more affordable guy, because of Austin Eckler is going to have that name value. And I do think he still has some left in the tank, but he's probably going to be drafted higher than what I'm going to want to pay for him. And so, last year I was fading Brian Robinson because I'm sick in the head whenever it comes to Antonio Gibson, and that didn't really work out that well for me. And so Brian Robinson will probably be the way that I end up going, because I do still think he'll have a sizable role even with the addition of Austin Eckler. And I think he'll be the cheaper option. So that'll probably be the way that I end up leaning once we, start drafts up in August.
I like it. So that's the 5 teams with the major coaching changes that we have broken down for you today with Alfredo Brown. And we're going to play a little bit of it. We're going to play a little game here before we let you go, Alfredo. We're going to play over under. We're going to go through the 5 teams that we covered. We're going to try to guess the over under win total for each of the 5. We'll start with you, and we'll start with the Falcons. Over under 9.5 wins.
Oh, it's lofty. You know what? I'm going to say over. I'm just super excited about the Falcons. That defense got a lot better last year. The offensive line is looking a lot better. This was one of those teams that we say this a lot about teams. They're a quarterback away. This was actually a team that was a quarterback away.
Yeah.
And subtract a head coach. And they did that. They've brought in the whole new staff. They've got the quarterback. Yeah, I'm going to go over.
Yeah, I know both of you guys are Saints fans right here, but Atlanta's going over. They're winning the division next year.
It's going to be a good time. Guys. Yeah, that's not a good division.
I am sitting here, And I was
They're,
having
they're
this
part,
argu-
part of the reason they're going over is because of the division they play in.
Yeah, I was arguing with friends the other day. They're like, "Oh, they're playing the AFC West," and I'm like, "Garbage, garbage, garbage." Most of those teams. KC good. Atlanta's winning at least 11 next year is what I told them. So over.
So the overs all the way. Okay, Los Angeles Chargers over under 7.5 wins.
Starting with me.
Yeah, we'll start with you, Alfredo.
Oh, I'm going under. I'm going clear
Okay.
under here.
I
Yeah.
like it.
They still have a lot of holes on that team, man. I get it. Harbaugh's good, and they're going to try to control the clock and run the ball, but running the ball and controlling the clock really helps when you have a lead. And if you don't have a lead, like none of that's going to matter, man. So yeah, I'm going under.
Under 7.5. Drew?
Yeah, give me the under as well. I'm done on being the guy that's too high on the Chargers.
We mean they're not making the playoffs this year?
No, no, they're not.
Go ahead, Rhett.
All right, if you're gonna allow me to be corny for a little bit, Harbaugh and the Pleats will not be elite. Give me the under.
I like it. Okay, Seattle Seahawks over under 8.5 wins. I'm being a little generous with the Seahawks there based on their roster construction.
Huh. All right. I'm going to go over. I still think the Seahawks team is very, very strong. Their defense was on the up and up last year. Cardinals are going to be improved. Rams, sorry, they lose Aaron Donald. I know I'm bringing it up again, but like that's going to be a huge blow to that team. Really, the team that's going to be continuing to be a thorn in their side is going to be San Francisco. But I do think that Seattle can make their way back into the playoffs, and I think that's about the win total that they're going to need.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I think that's a really good line. It's a tough line, but I'll take the over and give them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, it's the best line you've made so far. So it's right along the lines where they're either going to be 8-9 or 9-8 in my opinion. So I'm just going to go ahead so we can break this little deadlock we have. I'm going to go under and go 8-9 right here for Seattle.
All right, Seattle Seahawks. All right, New England Patriots over under. I want to see where you
need to go to where I can actually pick the over. That's what
4.5 wins for the Patriots.
It's another good line.
4.5. That is a good line. That's a solid line. I'm going to say that they win 4 games. I'm going to say they win 4 games, and they're picking again in the top 3 next year.
I like any wins in the division.
Not against the Dolphins or the Bills. Maybe they get
against the Jets.
Maybe they squeak one out against the Jets, but I don't know. They got a lot better too, man. The AFC East is going to be scary and annoying this year, but it kind of feels like the Patriots are going to be the free bingo square every time you play them.
And they're still the goddamn Jets. Drew?
Yeah, if Bill was still here, I might give him the over just for the sake of Bill finding a way to squeak 1 or 2 out. But yeah, give me the under. I think this team has as good a shot as anybody to be the number 1 overall pick next year.
Ooh, Rhett.
Yeah, it's got to be under. But once again, I felt like going contrarian, just saying 5 wins, why not? But no, this is an under team. Like they're going to be bad. The offense isn't there. The defense isn't there. They're replacing a guy who was there for 20-something years with a first-time head coach who was learning the ropes on the fly. Yeah, this is an under situation.
All right, last one. Washington Commanders, 5.5 wins over under, Alfredo.
I think I can go over there. I think a Cliff Kingsbury offense is going to be good enough to put up some points. I know that they've got their weaknesses everywhere else, but this is a team that they were able to squeak out some wins last year with Sam Howell. Like I know they're not great. I get it. Like they're picking 2nd overall, but I'm going to go over here. I got a little more confidence in the Commanders this season.
I like it.
Yeah, it's been an interesting offseason because they brought in some of the veterans they brought in. You think that they might have a win now roster, but I think that could, like, while it might not lead to them being a playoff team, I think some of the veteran leadership they have could lead to a couple more regular season wins they probably don't have any business winning. So give me the over.
Right. Yeah, I'm looking at the people they're playing right now. They play New Orleans. They're not going to be great. The Giants won't be great. They play the Giants. They play them twice in the division, so that could be 2 wins right there. Carolina's in there, so that's already 4. They might sneak 1 or 2. So hey, give me the over on the Commanders this year.
I like it. And one last one team that we didn't talk about. I'm just interested to hear your thoughts on this team, Alfredo. The Chicago Bears over under 8.5 wins.
Ooh, 8.5. I'm gonna go under, just simply because I don't think they've improved it that much to get into the 9-win range, and you just rarely see rookie quarterbacks do that. I think as a football fan base in general, we're getting really spoiled and we're getting conditioned to continue to expect outliers. We keep thinking that we're going to see the Justin Herberts and the CJ Strouds every year, and we don't realize how rare those are. And the Puka Nakuas and like who's the next one. And these are outliers that we can't just keep expecting. And I know Caleb Williams is really good. I get it, but like there's still going to be a learning process with him. Talk about a guy that holds onto the ball long and tries to make hero ball plays every single chance he gets. He's going to have to learn how to get rid of that ball a little bit faster, play a safer game. That Chicago Bears offense, the offensive line in general still isn't all that great. I know they're getting better. So yeah, I'm going to go under.
I like it.
What was the line?
8.5 for the Bears.
So that means they would need to win 2 more games than they did last year. I think that with Caleb Williams, they're 2 games better than they were last year. With the additions they've made on top of Caleb Williams, and I know he has his fair critiques of, can he play within structure? I personally just think that the structure itself at USC last year wasn't all that great. But so I think that, I know generational prospect, all that gets thrown around a ton. I'm not going to do that. But I just think with the additions they've already made and then adding Caleb Williams and potentially we'll see what they do with their other first-round pick, I think that there's room for this team to win 2 more games than last year. I'll take the over.
I like it.
And I'm looking at it, and I'm looking under all the way because I'm looking at a schedule right now that has San Fran, it has Houston, it has Detroit twice. I mean, it has Green Bay twice, Minnesota twice. I mean, there is a lot of difficult games in that schedule. So, I mean, I guess I have to go under, but just barely.
All right. There you heard it. That is NFL coaching changes and the impacts they will have on the fantasy football season with none other than Alfredo Brown. And Alfredo, before we let you go, the frame is yours. Let the listeners and the viewers know where they can find you, what you got going on inside of fantasy football and outside of fantasy football.
Yeah, well, you can always find me on Twitter or any social media platform at the Pretend GM. All my work is over at footballguys.com and on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/footballguys, where you can check out the Football Guys Fantasy Football Show. We're on all major podcast platforms, Apple, Spotify, all those. And I unfortunately have to do that every week with Dave Kluge. It is a nightmare. But we also bring on Jagger May and Joey Wright and a bunch of great guests from around the industry. So that's a lot of fun. And soon Jagger and I are going to be hopping into doing some rookie prospect scouting profiles that we'll be putting those videos up on the YouTube page and incorporating our rookie guide with that and a bunch of the great tools that we have over on the Football Guys website. So yeah, be sure to check that out.
That's awesome. Drew Rhett, any last words?
No, sir. Good to go.
A few words. Well, Alfredo, we appreciate you coming on the show. We appreciate you sharing your knowledge and your time with us here on Fourth and Frames. For Drew Scott, for Rhett Manuel, I'm Chris Battistel. Toodles.
This